"Why don't you touch my daughter, human?" My answer shocked them all. "She's too pure." Derek Allen stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel, watching as the gleaming spires of Seluria's capital city came into view. The planet's atmosphere gave everything a soft azure glow that reminded him of Earth's oceans, something he hadn't seen in nearly 3 years of the interstellar diplomatic service. "Commander Allen," his aide's voice interrupted his thoughts, "the Selurian delegation is preparing to receive us. High Chancellor Vorn specifically requested your presence at the front of the party." Derek nodded, straightening the collar of his formal diplomatic uniform. The silver and navy blue ensemble had been specifically designed to impress the Selurians, whose culture placed high value on visual displays of authority and status. "Any last-minute intelligence I should know about?" Derek asked, his deep voice calm despite the gravity of the mission. "Nothing beyond the briefing, sir." "The alliance is crucial. Earth needs Selurian rare minerals, they need our agricultural technology, and they're traditional in their approach to sealing diplomatic arrangements." Derek knew what that meant. The Selurian custom of marriage alliances had been thoroughly covered in his briefing. What hadn't been made clear until his arrival in Selurian space was that he would be the human representative in this particular arrangement. The landing was smooth, the reception elaborate. Selurian guards, tall, blue-skinned humanoids with ornate armor that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, lined the pathway to the Grand Hall. Their eyes, universally emerald green with vertical pupils, tracked the human delegation with undisguised curiosity. High Chancellor Vorn awaited them at the hall's entrance. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders and skin the color of a deep ocean trench, he cut an imposing figure. The elaborate crest atop his head pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that Derek had been taught to recognize as indicators of formal welcome. "Commander Allen," Vorn's voice rumbled, the universal translator barely keeping up with the complex harmonics of Selurian speech. "Your journey was without incident, I trust." "It was, Chancellor. Earth sends its highest regards and anticipation for our new partnership." The formalities continued as they moved through the Grand Hall, a massive structure of what appeared to be living coral and metal alloys unknown to human science. Derek maintained his diplomatic composure, but he couldn't help noticing the whispers and glances from the assembled Selurian nobility. It wasn't until the formal dinner that Derek first saw her. Irie entered the hall accompanied by attendants, her movements graceful and measured. Her skin was a much lighter blue than the other Selurians, almost luminescent in its delicacy. Her eyes, those same emerald orbs that marked her species, seemed wider, more expressive, filled with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Her silvery white hair cascaded down her back, adorned with what appeared to be living ornaments that pulsed with soft light. But what struck Derek most was how young she appeared. While he knew Selurians aged differently than humans, everything about her screamed innocence and youth. The white flowing garment she wore only enhanced this impression, as did the small, lock-shaped pendant that hung at her throat. Chancellor Vorn's voice boomed across the hall. "Commander Allen, may I present my daughter, Princess Aerie of the House of Vorn, keeper of the title mysteries, and your betrothed." The hall fell silent. Derek had known this was coming, but seeing her in person, seeing how young and innocent she appeared, made his stomach tighten. He rose from his seat and bowed formally, exactly as protocol dictated. "Princess Aerie, it is my honor to meet you." Her voice when she replied was soft but clear. "The honor is mine, Commander Allen of Earth." Her universal translator had a slight musical quality that hadn't been present in her father's. Throughout the dinner, Derek caught her stealing glances at him, quickly looking away whenever their eyes met. He maintained his professional demeanor, discussing trade agreements and defense pacts with the Chancellor and his advisors. But his mind kept returning to the impossible situation he found himself in. The ceremony took place 3 days later, a blend of Selurian tradition and hastily incorporated human elements. Derek spoke his vows clearly, as did Irie, though her voice trembled slightly. The alliance was sealed, the treaties signed, and Derek Allen found himself married to an alien princess, who, despite her actual age, appeared to his human perception as little more than a child. In the months that followed, Derek took up residence in the diplomatic quarter of the Selurian Palace. He and Irie maintained separate chambers, connected by a common sitting area, where they would sometimes share meals or engage in careful conversation. He taught her about Earth culture. She explained Selurian traditions. A tentative friendship formed, but Derek kept a respectful distance, treating her more like a diplomatic ward than a wife, until the day Chancellor Vorn summoned him to a private audience. The Chancellor's private chamber was a stark contrast to the ornate public spaces of the Selurian palace. Here the walls were bare stone with bioluminescent veins pulsing in slow, hypnotic patterns. A single window overlooked the capital city, its azure glow filtering through a crystalline pane that subtly altered the light spectrum. Derek stood at attention, hands clasped behind his back, as Chancellor Vorn paced the length of the chamber. The Selurian leader's crest flashed patterns that the human diplomat had learned to recognize as irritation. "Commander Allen," Vorn finally spoke, his voice a low rumble. "I have respected your human customs and given you time to adjust to our ways. But there is a matter we must address." Derek maintained his diplomatic composure. "I'm at your service, Chancellor." Vorn stopped pacing and turned to face Derek directly. His massive frame seemed to fill the room, and the bioluminescent patterns on his crest intensified. "Why haven't you touched my daughter yet, human male? Is she not attractive to you?" The question hung in the air between them. Derek had anticipated this conversation for months, but found himself momentarily at a loss for words. The universal translator had been uncomfortably precise in its rendering. "Chancellor, Do not offer diplomatic evasions," Vorn interrupted, his voice sharp. "My daughter reports that you have not even attempted to claim your marital rights." The court whispers, "Some suggest Earth mocks our traditions by sending a man who cannot perform his duties." Derek felt heat rising in his face, not from embarrassment, but from a flash of indignation. He straightened his shoulders and met the Chancellor's gaze directly. "She's too pure and innocent," he said firmly. "I can't do otherwise." The Chancellor's crest flashed patterns Derek couldn't interpret. The massive Selurian stood motionless, studying him with those emerald eyes. "Explain," Vorn finally demanded. Derek chose his words carefully. "On Earth, we have strict customs about age and consent. Princess Aerie appears, to human perception, extremely young. While I understand Selurian physiology differs from human, I cannot overcome my cultural programming that tells me she is a child." "A child?" Vorn's translator crackled with what might have been incredulity. "Irie has seen 27 seasonal cycles. She has completed her education in statecraft, sciences, and the arts. She is fully mature by our standards." "I understand that intellectually," Derek replied, "but humans rely heavily on visual cues. Her appearance triggers protective instincts, not marital ones." The Chancellor's crest pulsed slowly as he processed this information. "You refuse her not from lack of desire or respect, but from protection." "Yes," Derek said, relieved that the concept seemed to translate. "In human culture, it would be considered deeply wrong for me to consummate a union with someone who appears as she does." Vorn made a sound the translator didn't catch, and something between a rumble and a click. "Fascinating. Your species protects its young so fiercely that the instinct overrides even diplomatic necessity?" "It's one of our strongest imperatives," Derek confirmed. The Chancellor moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. "The treaty requires a true union, Commander. The symbolic value of our bloodlines joining is central to the alliance." Derek felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. "I understand the diplomatic implications, Chancellor, but I cannot violate my core principles, even for Earth's benefit." Vorn turned back to face him. "And if Aerie were to appear less innocent to your human perception?" Derek frowned. "I'm not sure I understand." "The pendant she wears, the lock you've noticed, it is not merely decorative. It is a suppressor of certain mature aspects of Selurian physiology, a tradition for unmarried females of noble houses." Derek's mind raced to process this new information. "Are you saying that Arie's appearance is artificially maintained?" "Not artificial, restrained. The transition to full maturity is controlled in our culture, particularly for those in diplomatic marriages. The lock can be removed when both parties are ready. Derek felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that Ari wasn't actually the child she appeared to be, confusion about Selurian biology, and a lingering sense of ethical uncertainty. "I would need to understand more about this transition," he said carefully. Vorn's crest pulsed with what Derek had learned to recognize as approval. "Of course. Ari can explain the process herself. It is her choice when to remove the lock. That is our way. But now she understands why you have kept your distance." As if on cue, a soft chime announced someone at the chamber door. It slid open to reveal Ari herself, her silvery hair catching the light from the window. Her eyes met Derek's briefly before lowering in what might have been shyness, or something else entirely. "Father," she said softly, "the Planetary Council requests your presence?" Vorn nodded. "We will continue this discussion later, Commander Allen, perhaps with a better understanding between us." As the Chancellor departed, Derek found himself alone with Ari for the first time since their awkward conversation about Earth's weather patterns 3 days prior. She touched the lock pendant at her throat, her gaze now meeting his with new awareness. "You find me childlike?" she asked, her voice carrying a note he hadn't heard before. Derek swallowed hard. "It's a human perception issue, Princess." "I meant no offense." A small smile played at her lips. "No offense is taken, husband. In fact, I find your protective instinct quite admirable." She stepped closer. "Perhaps we should discuss these cultural differences more thoroughly, in private." The shared sitting room between their chambers had become a neutral territory where Derek and Ari could speak freely. Tonight it felt different. The usual soft ambient lighting had been dimmed, and fragrant Selurian blossoms floated in shallow bowls, releasing a scent reminiscent of jasmine and cinnamon. Ari sat across from Derek, her posture more relaxed than he'd ever seen it. Her fingers occasionally drifted to the lock pendant at her throat, a gesture he now understood carried significant meaning. "On Siluria," she began, her voice melodic in the quiet room, "physical maturation happens in stages. For noble females, the final stage is delayed until marriage." Derek leaned forward, genuinely curious. "The pendant controls this?" "It contains hormonal regulators," she explained. "When removed, my body will complete its final maturation cycle. I will still be me, but..." She paused, searching for words the translator could properly convey. More fully expressed. "And this is your choice? Not something forced upon you?" Her emerald eyes softened. "It is our tradition, but yes, the choice to remove it is mine alone. My father cannot command it, nor can you. That is why your words to him were so surprising." Derek ran a hand through his dark hair. "I'm sorry if I embarrassed you." "You did not," she said quickly. "You honored me. In all our history, no husband has ever refused his rights out of concern for his wife's well-being." Her blue-tinged fingers reached across the table, hesitantly touching his hand. "Humans are remarkable." The touch sent an unexpected warmth through Derek's arm. He'd avoided physical contact with Ari since their ceremonial hand-binding at the wedding, but this simple gesture felt different now that he understood more. "How long does the transition take?" He asked, not withdrawing his hand. 3 cycles of our larger moon, approximately 12 of your Earth days." She tilted her head, studying him. "You would see changes gradually. My features would mature. My voice might deepen slightly. My body would, She trailed off, a deeper blue flush rising to her cheeks. Derek found himself fascinated by that blush. It was the first truly adult reaction he'd seen from her. "And this is something you want?" he asked carefully. Ira's gaze met his directly. "I have been ready since before our marriage. I waited because I sensed your discomfort. I did not understand its source until today." She stood gracefully and moved to the large viewport that overlooked the capital city. The twin moons of Siluria cast their light across the azure landscape, bathing her in a silvery glow that made her hair shimmer like starlight. "In our culture, the removal of the lock is a private ceremony between husband and wife," she said softly. Would you be willing to participate, not as a diplomat, but as my husband?" Derek joined her at the viewport, standing close enough to sense the subtle warmth radiating from her skin. "I would be honored," he said, surprised by how much he meant it. Her smile was radiant. "Then tonight, if you are willing." The ceremony was simple. Ari changed into a flowing garment of pale blue that reminded Derek of flowing water. She knelt on a cushion in the center of her chamber, and Derek sat cross-legged before her. Between them was a small basin of clear liquid that smelled faintly of sea salt. "The lock must be submerged while you speak the words of release," she instructed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I will guide you." Derek nodded, suddenly aware of the gravity of the moment. This wasn't just a cultural ritual. It was a profound act of trust. Irie leaned forward, the pendant dangling over the basin. "Place your hands around mine," she said. Her skin was warm against his palms as they together lowered the lock into the liquid. The moment it touched the surface, it began to glow with a soft inner light. "Repeat after me," she said. "I release what has been held." "I release what has been held," Derek echoed, his voice steady. "I welcome what will become." "I welcome what will become." As two paths join as one. As two paths join as one. The pendant's glow intensified, then suddenly dimmed. When they withdrew their hands, the lock mechanism had opened, revealing a small blue stone that pulsed with gentle light. "It is done," Ari whispered, removing the pendant from her neck for the first time since Derek had known her. She placed it reverently in a small box beside them. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Derek noticed a subtle shift in her features. Nothing dramatic, just a softening here, a strengthening there. Her eyes seemed to deepen, her cheekbones becoming more defined. The change was subtle but unmistakable. "I feel," she began, then stopped, surprised by the slightly richer timbre of her voice. "I feel more present." Derek found himself captivated by the transformation. It wasn't that she suddenly appeared adult. Rather, the childlike quality that had disturbed him was fading, revealing the woman who had been there all along. "May I?" he asked, raising his hand toward her face. She nodded, and he gently traced the line of her jaw, which seemed firmer now. Her skin was still that beautiful pale blue, but it had a warmth and vitality that hadn't been there before. "You're beautiful," he said honestly. Her eyes, still those stunning emerald orbs, but somehow deeper now, met his. "As are you, husband." When their lips met, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The kiss was tentative at first, then grew in confidence as they explored this new territory together. Derek felt the last of his reservations melting away as he recognized the woman in his arms as truly his equal and partner. Later, as they lay together in the soft glow of Seluria's moons, Derek traced patterns on the bare skin of her shoulder, marveling at how quickly everything had changed between them. "What happens now?" he asked. Ari nestled against him, her body fitting perfectly against his. "Now we truly begin our life together. And perhaps," she smiled up at him, "we show both our worlds what can happen when humans and Selurians truly understand each other." Word spread quickly through the Selurian court. The human diplomat and the princess were no longer maintaining separate chambers. The servants noticed the changed atmosphere between them, the lingering glances, the casual touches, the private smiles. Within days, the entire palace buzzed with the news that the alliance had been truly consummated. Derek noticed the difference immediately. Courtiers who had previously regarded him with polite indifference now bowed deeper in his presence. Guards stood straighter. Even Chancellor Vorn's advisors, who had always maintained a cool distance, now sought his opinions on matters beyond Earth relations. "They respect you more now," Irie observed as they strolled through the palace's living gardens, where bioluminescent plants created pathways of soft light. Her transformation continued gradually. Each day her features became slightly more defined, her movements more fluid and assured. Derek raised an eyebrow. "Because I finally performed my husbandly duties?" She laughed, a sound that still surprised him with its musical quality. "Partially, but more because you waited until I was ready. That showed character they didn't expect from an off-worlder." "Human decency shouldn't be surprising," he said, taking her hand as they walked. "Perhaps not. But many species we've encountered view such restraint as weakness." She squeezed his fingers. "Humans are, unique in how you balance strength with compassion." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Lady Marin, one of the Queen's senior handmaidens and a notorious court gossip. She bowed elaborately, her elder Selurian features arranged in what Derek had learned to recognize as a smile. "Princess Aerie, Commander Allen," she greeted them. "The court rejoices in your happiness. The Queen herself has commented on how well the alliance flourishes." Derek nodded politely. "Please convey our thanks to Her Majesty." "Indeed I shall." Lady Marin's gaze lingered on Aerie. "The change has become you, Princess. You glow with health. Perhaps soon we will celebrate even more joyous news?" The implication was clear, and Derek felt Aerie stiffen slightly beside him. "The blessings of union come in their own time, Lady Marin," Aerie replied diplomatically. After the handmaiden departed, Derek turned to Aerie. "That wasn't subtle." "No," she agreed, her expression troubled. "The court expects an heir. It's complicated." They continued walking in silence until they reached a private alcove surrounded by tall, swaying plants that provided both privacy and a gentle ambient hum that would mask their conversation. "I didn't think about children," Derek admitted. "Is it even possible between our species?" Aerie sat on a living bench that adjusted its shape to accommodate her. "Theoretically, yes. Silurian and human genetic structures are remarkably compatible. It's one reason our peoples found each other so intriguing, but it would require medical assistance and careful monitoring." "And political pressure, apparently," Derek added, sitting beside her. "An heir would cement the alliance beyond any possibility of dissolution," she explained. "A child of both worlds would be a living symbol of our unity." Derek ran a hand through his hair. "On Earth, we don't typically have children just for political expediency." "Nor do we, ideally," Aerie said softly. "But royal marriages have always carried such expectations." She placed a hand on his arm. "I'm not suggesting we must decide this now. The transformation isn't even complete." He covered her hand with his. "I just want to make sure whatever happens between us is because we choose it, not because the court expects it." Her emerald eyes, now more vibrant than ever, studied his face. "You continue to surprise me, Derek Allen. Most species would be eager to spread their genetic material, especially in a position of such advantage." "Humans are funny that way," he said with a half smile. "We tend to think children should come from love, not duty." "And what of us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is there love between us, or merely duty and pleasure?" The question caught him off guard. Their physical relationship had developed rapidly since the removal of the pendant, their bodies finding a harmony that transcended their different biologies. But love? He hadn't allowed himself to consider it. Looking at her now, the subtle glow of her skin, the intelligence in her eyes, the strength that had always been there, but was now fully expressed, Derek realized the truth. "I think," he said carefully, "that what began as duty has become something much more. I didn't expect to feel this way about you, Aerie, but I do." The smile that illuminated her face was answer enough, even before she leaned forward to kiss him. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his, a Selurian gesture of deep affection. "Then perhaps," she murmured, "we should consider the court's expectations on our own terms, in our own time." Their moment of intimacy was interrupted by a palace attendant clearing his throat discreetly at the entrance to the alcove. "Commander Allen, Princess Aerie," he announced formally. "Chancellor Vorn requests your immediate presence in the Grand Council chamber. The Galactic Diplomatic Corps has arrived with urgent matters to discuss." Derek exchanged a glance with Aerie. The GDC rarely intervened in established diplomatic relationships unless something significant had changed. "Tell my father we will attend him shortly," Aerie replied. As the attendant departed, Derek stood and offered his hand to help her up. An unnecessary gesture, but one she accepted with grace. "Duty call," he said. "Always at the most inconvenient moments," she replied with a wry smile. "But perhaps this time, we face it truly together." Hand in hand, they made their way toward the council chamber, unaware that the next phase of their relationship, and the alliance itself, was about to be tested in ways neither had anticipated. The Grand Council chamber hummed with tension. Derek had never seen it so crowded. Chancellor Vorn and his advisors, the Queen's representatives, and a delegation from the Galactic Diplomatic Corps in their distinctive silver and blue uniforms. At the center stood Ambassador Trell, a tall Andorian with metallic skin who served as the GDC's chief science officer. Commander Allen, Princess Aerie, Chancellor Vorn acknowledged their arrival. Ambassador Trell brings news that concerns your union directly. Derek felt Aerie's hand tighten in his as they took their designated seats at the council table. I'll be direct, Ambassador Trell began, his voice resonating with metallic undertones. Our geneticists have made a breakthrough in understanding human Selurian compatibility. The potential offspring from your union would possess unprecedented genetic advantages, enhanced regenerative capabilities, extended lifespan, and possibly even limited telepathic abilities. A murmur rippled through the chamber. This discovery has complicated matters, Trell continued. Several factions have expressed intense interest. The Biotech Consortium wants exclusive rights to study any offspring. Genetic Heritage Preservation League demands the union be dissolved to prevent contamination of both bloodlines. Our marriage is not a scientific experiment, Derek stated firmly. Of course not, Trell agreed smoothly, but you must understand the implications. A child with such genetic potential would be a target for many interests across the galaxy. Chancellor Vorn's crest pulsed with agitation. The princess is under Selurian protection. No outside faction dictates our royal bloodline. Naturally, Trell nodded. However, I must inform you that the GDC has placed your union under special diplomatic protection status. Any offspring will be granted unprecedented security measures. Derek exchanged glances with Aerie, whose expression remained carefully neutral despite the tension radiating from her. There's more, Trell added. Given these developments, the GDC formally recognizes your union's significance to galactic stability. We request documentation of its consummation. Documentation, Derek echoed, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. High Counselor Marin stepped forward. Ambassador, the Human Selurian Union has indeed been consummated. The court has confirmed it. With respect, Trell replied, GDC protocols require official verification for unions of this diplomatic magnitude. Chancellor Vorn rose to his impressive height. What the ambassador is delicately avoiding saying, Commander Allen, is that Selurian tradition already provides for such verification. The royal fertility ritual is our ancient custom for unions of state importance. Derek felt his jaw tighten. And what exactly does this ritual entail? The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Aerie spoke before anyone else could. It is a ceremony where the royal couple's union is witnessed by court representatives, she explained quietly. It ensures the validity of any heir produced. Witnessed? Derek struggled to keep his voice level. You mean? Not in the crude way you might imagine, Chancellor Vorn interjected. The ritual takes place in the sacred chamber. The couple is separated from witnesses by translucent screens that show only silhouettes. The ritual is as much spiritual as physical, a blessing of fertility. Derek fought to maintain his diplomatic composure. On Earth, such matters are deeply private. As they are for most Silurians in ordinary marriages, Aerie assured him. But royal unions have always carried different obligations. Ambassador Trell cleared his throat. The GDC would accept the Selurian ritual as sufficient verification with the addition of genetic sampling afterward to confirm compatibility patterns. Derek felt trapped between galactic politics and alien cultural expectations. He looked at Aerie, trying to gauge her feelings on the matter. May I request a private moment with my wife? He asked. Chancellor Vorn nodded. The antechamber is available. Once alone, Derek paced the small room. This is insane. They want us to perform for an audience? Aerie watched him with those emerald eyes that had grown increasingly perceptive. It's not a performance in the way humans might think. The witnesses observe only that the union occurs, not its details. The screens show merely movement and completion. That doesn't make it better. Derek ran a hand through his hair. On Earth, this would be considered deeply invasive. I understand, she said softly, but consider the alternative. Without verification, our union remains politically vulnerable. With these new genetic revelations, that vulnerability extends to any child we might have. Derek stopped pacing. You're not bothered by this? I was raised knowing such rituals might be part of my duty, she explained, but I would never ask you to violate your principles. We can refuse. Her willingness to support his objection, despite the consequences, touched him deeply. Derek took her hands in his. What would refusing mean for us? For the alliance? It would create difficulties, she admitted. Questions about the legitimacy of our union would persist, and with these new genetic findings, she hesitated. Protection for any future child might be compromised. Derek considered this. The thought of their hypothetical child being targeted by various factions without official protection was unacceptable. There is really no alternative. There is one, why? She said hesitantly. We could request a modified ritual. In cases where one partner comes from a culture with different customs, accommodations have occasionally been made. What kind of accommodations? The witnesses could be reduced to the minimum required, perhaps just my father as royal representative and Ambassador Trell for the GDC. The screens could be made more opaque. The ritual could be shortened to its essential elements. Derek took a deep breath. And this would satisfy both Selurian tradition and GDC requirements? It should, she nodded. It maintains the form of the ritual while respecting your cultural sensitivities. He studied her face, now fully matured into its adult beauty. The transformation was complete, and with it, his feelings for her had deepened beyond anything he'd expected from this diplomatic arrangement. If you're comfortable with it, then I'll agree to the modified ritual, he said finally. For us and for any future we might build together. Her smile was radiant. You continue to show why humans are so remarkable, Derek. You adapt without surrendering your principles. When they returned to the council chamber, Derek addressed the assembled dignitaries with newfound resolve. Princess Irie and I will consent to a modified ritual that respects both Selurian tradition and human privacy customs. We propose minimal witnesses and enhanced screens. He fixed Ambassador Trell with a steady gaze. And we require guarantees of protection for any offspring, regardless of who might covet their genetic potential. A murmur of approval rippled through the Selurian contingent. Even Ambassador Trell looked impressed. Humanity continues to surprise us, the ambassador remarked. Your adaptability without compromise is most instructive. The modified fertility ritual took place 3 days later in the sacred chamber, an ancient room deep within the palace complex. True to the negotiated terms, only Chancellor Vorn and Ambassador Trell served as witnesses, separated from Derek and Irie by screens that revealed nothing but the vaguest of silhouettes. And despite his initial misgivings, Derek found the ceremony surprisingly meaningful. The ritual words, translated into both English and Selurian, spoke of unity, fertility, and the joining of worlds. Incense filled the air with a scent reminiscent of cinnamon and sea salt, while bioluminescent patterns on the ceiling mimicked the stars of both Earth and Siluria. When it was over, Derek felt a strange sense of peace. What had begun as an uncomfortable political necessity had transformed into something genuine and profound. The look in Arie's eyes told him she felt the same. The ritual is complete, Chancellor Vorn announced formally from behind the screen. The Union is blessed and recognized throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Trell added, the GDC acknowledges this union and extends its protection to any offspring that may result. They were escorted back to their chambers with ceremonial guards, a Selurian tradition symbolizing the protection of potential new life. Derek found the whole experience surreal, but was relieved it was behind them. That wasn't as terrible as I feared, he admitted as they settled into their private sitting room. Arie smiled, her now fully matured features radiant in the soft light. You handled it with remarkable grace. My father was impressed. Just doing my diplomatic duty, Derek quipped, pulling her close. Is that what you call it? She teased, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. 2 weeks later, Derek was reviewing trade agreements when Arie entered his study, her expression unreadable. We need to talk, she said, closing the door behind her. Something in her tone made him set aside his work immediately. What's wrong? She sat beside him, taking his hands in hers. Nothing is wrong exactly, but there's something you should know. She took a deep breath. I'm carrying our child. Derek stared at her, momentarily speechless. But how? I mean, I know how, but so soon? We only completed the ritual 2 weeks ago. A smile played at her lips. The ritual wasn't our first union, Derek. And Selurian gestation is different from human. Our physicians can detect conception within days. "You're sure?" he asked, his mind racing. "Completely. The royal physicians confirmed it this morning." She hesitated. "Are you displeased?" Derek realized his shock might be misinterpreted. He pulled her into a gentle embrace. "No, not at all. Just surprised at the timing." He pulled back to look into her eyes. "We're having a baby." Her smile was radiant. "The first human Selurian child. A living symbol of our alliance." Reality crashed in as Derek remembered the GDC's warnings about their offspring's genetic potential. "We need to be careful." Ambassador Trell warned that our child would be a target. "The palace has already enhanced security," she assured him, "and the GDC's protection extends to our child from the moment of conception. Still, I'd feel better if we took additional precautions." Derek's protective instincts were in full force. "I want to bring in human security specialists to work alongside your royal guards." Ari nodded. "A wise precaution. My father will agree, I'm sure." The news spread quickly through the palace, then across Siluria, and finally to Earth. The response was overwhelmingly positive. The Human-Selurian alliance now had a living embodiment, a child who would bridge two worlds. But not everyone celebrated. 3 days after the announcement, Derek was summoned to an urgent meeting with Earth's ambassador to Siluria, Admiral Hawkins, a grizzled veteran of both space combat and diplomacy. "We've intercepted communications from the Genetic Heritage Preservation League," Hawkins informed him grimly. "They're not just opposed to your union. They're actively plotting against it." Derek felt his jaw tighten. What kind of plotting? The worst kind. "They've hired mercenaries from the Orion Fringe. Their plan is to abduct Princess Aerie and terminate the pregnancy." Cold fury washed over Derek. "Over my dead body." "That's part of their plan too," Hawkins said bluntly. "Look, Commander, this isn't just about you and the princess anymore. This child represents something unprecedented, proof that humans and other species can not only coexist, but create new life together. Some see that as a threat to their worldview." "What are we doing about it?" "Earth is sending a special operations team, ostensibly as a diplomatic honor guard for the upcoming celebration of your union. They'll coordinate with Selurian security." Derek nodded. "I want to be involved in the security planning." "Figured you'd say that," Hawkins smiled grimly. "The team arrives tomorrow. Until then, stay close to the princess." When Derek returned to their chambers, he found Irie in the sitting room, reading from a glowing tablet. She looked up with a smile that faded when she saw his expression. "What's happened?" she asked, setting aside the tablet. Derek sat beside her and explained the threat. To his surprise, she remained calm. "We expected this," she said. "My father's intelligence network detected similar chatter. The palace guard has already been doubled." "You knew and didn't tell me?" Derek felt a flash of irritation. "I was going to tell you tonight," she said, placing her hand over his. "I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily until we had more information." Derek sighed. "I'm sorry. It's just, I feel responsible for protecting you both." Her expression softened. "That's very human of you." She took his hand and placed it gently on her abdomen. "There's nothing to feel yet, but the physicians say the embryo is developing perfectly. A perfect blend of both our species." The simple gesture melted away his frustration. This was his family now, not just a diplomatic arrangement, but his wife and child. "I never expected any of this when I took this assignment," he admitted. "I thought it would be a straightforward diplomatic post." Aerie laughed softly. "And I never expected to fall in love with an alien who initially refused to touch me because I was too pure." Derek smiled at the memory. "Well, you were." "And now?" she asked, her emerald eyes twinkling. "Now you're still pure, Haniko-China," he said, pulling her close, "but in a different way. Pure strength, pure beauty, pure you." As they held each other, Derek made a silent vow to protect his new family, no matter what forces might align against them. The child growing within Irie represented not just their love, but the potential for a new understanding between species. And he would defend that potential with everything he had. The Grand Plaza of Siluria sparkled under the planet's azure sky, decorated with shimmering banners representing both Earth and Selurian colors intertwined. Thousands of Silurians gathered for the celebration of unity, a public acknowledgement of Derek and Ares' union and the forthcoming child that would embody the alliance between their worlds. Derek stood beside Ares on the ceremonial platform, acutely aware of the Earth Special Operations team dispersed throughout the crowd in Selurian and formal wear, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Captain Rivera, the team leader, had positioned himself near the platform's edge, his hand never straying far from his concealed weapon. "Nervous," Irie whispered, her hand resting protectively over her still flat abdomen. "Cautiously alert," Derek replied with a reassuring smile. "The security measures are solid." And they were. Beyond the human operatives, Chancellor Vorn had deployed his elite royal guard throughout the plaza. Ambassador Trell had contributed GDC peacekeepers to patrol the perimeter. Every entrance was monitored, every guest scanned. Yet Derek couldn't shake his unease. The intelligence report suggested the mercenaries were professionals, former military from the Orion Fringe, known for their ruthless efficiency and advanced cloaking technology. Chancellor Vorn approached the central podium, his ceremonial armor gleaming, the bioluminescent patterns on his crest pulsing with formal dignity. "People of Siluria," his voice boomed across the plaza, "today we celebrate not only the union of our princess with Commander Allen of Earth, but the miraculous new life they have created together, the first child of both our worlds." The crowd erupted in cheers, the Silurians' harmonics creating a sound like crashing waves. Derek felt Aerie squeeze his hand, her emerald eyes bright with emotion. "This child," Vorn continued, "represents our shared future, a future of cooperation, understanding, and strength through diversity." As the Chancellor spoke, Derek noticed Captain Rivera touch his earpiece, his expression suddenly tense. The captain caught Derek's eye and made a subtle hand signal. Threat detected. Derek's military training kicked in. Without alarming Ari, he shifted slightly, positioning himself between her and the most likely threat vectors. He scanned the crowd looking for anything unusual. There, a shimmer in the air near one of the decorative columns, the telltale distortion of a cloaking field. Derek leaned close to Ari, keeping his expression neutral. "When I give the word, drop to the floor and stay down." She gave an almost imperceptible nod, her royal training allowing her to maintain her serene expression despite the warning. Chancellor Vorn was still speaking. "Let this celebration mark a new era of..." The attack came with frightening speed. 3 shimmering distortions materialized in armored figures, their weapons already drawn. 2 headed directly for the platform while the 3rd fired into the crowd, creating chaos. "Now!" Derek shouted, pushing Aerie down as energy bolts sizzled through the air where they had been standing. The Royal Guard responded instantly, forming a protective circle around the Chancellor. The Earth Special Ops team converged on the platform, Captain Rivera already exchanging fire with one of the attackers. But Derek knew their primary target was Aerie. As the guards engaged the visible threats, he sensed, rather than saw movement behind them, a 4th attacker, still cloaked, circling to the platform's rear. "Stay down," he ordered Aerie, then sprang into action. Years of combat training on Earth had prepared Derek for many scenarios, but fighting an invisible opponent wasn't one of them. He relied on instinct, watching for subtle distortions in the air, listening for footsteps. A faint shimmer to his right. Derek lunged, tackling what appeared to be empty space. His arms connected with solid mass, and they crashed to the platform floor. The impact disrupted the attacker's cloaking field, revealing a humanoid figure in sleek combat armor. "Genetic abomination!" the mercenary hissed through his helmet, struggling to bring a wicked-looking blade to bear. "The bloodlines must remain pure." Derek blocked the knife thrust and delivered a powerful blow to the attacker's helmet, cracking its faceplate. "There's nothing purer than protecting your family," he growled. The mercenary was strong, but Derek fought with the ferocity of a man defending not just his wife and unborn child, but the future of 2 worlds. With a decisive move, he disarmed his opponent and rendered him unconscious with a precise strike to the neck. A human technique the mercenary clearly hadn't anticipated. Around them, the battle was turning. The Earth operatives had neutralized one attacker, while the Royal Guard had cornered another. The 3rd lay motionless near Captain Rivera, who sported a bleeding gash across his forehead but remained vigilant. Derek returned to Irie, who had been protected by 2 royal guards. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, helping her to her feet. "I'm fine," she assured him, her composure remarkable despite the chaos. Her eyes widened as she looked at his arm. "But you're wounded." Derek glanced down to see a deep cut on his forearm, blood soaking his ceremonial attire. "It's nothing," he said, though the pain was beginning to register. Chancellor Vorn strode toward them, his massive frame radiating fury and concern. "Princess, Commander, are you both unharmed?" "We're safe, Father," Aerie replied, thanks to Derek and the guards. The Chancellor's gaze fell on Derek's bleeding arm, then on the unconscious mercenary nearby. "You engaged the assassin personally?" "He was coming for my family," Derek said simply. "I did what was necessary." Vorn's crest pulsed with what Derek had learned to recognize as profound respect. "You fought as a true Selurian would, with honor and ferocity." The plaza was now secured, the attackers subdued and being taken into custody by GDC peacekeepers. The crowd, initially scattered by the attack, began to return, murmuring in awe as they witnessed the aftermath. Ambassador Trell approached, his metallic features set in grim lines. "Commander Allen, your actions today have impressed many who doubted the wisdom of this alliance. The Genetic Heritage Preservation League will find little sympathy after this failed attack." As medical personnel treated his wound, Derek kept Aerie close, his arm protectively around her shoulders. The attack had shaken him more than he cared to admit. Not for his own safety, but for hers and their unborn child's. "Perhaps," Aerie suggested softly, "this is the beginning of a new understanding. Today everyone saw that a human would fight, would bleed to protect his Selurian family." Derek looked out at the crowd, now watching them with newfound reverence. The story was already spreading, how the human diplomat had personally engaged an assassin to protect his wife and unborn child, how he had fought with a ferocity that matched any Selurian warrior. "Maybe you're right," he said. "Maybe this is exactly what both our worlds needed to see." As they stood together on the platform, bloodied but unbowed, Derek realized that what had begun as a diplomatic arrangement had become something far more powerful. A union that could inspire not just their 2 species, but perhaps the entire galaxy. 5 months after the attack in the Grand Plaza, Derek stood in the ancient Hall of Prophecies deep beneath the Selurian Royal Palace. The walls were covered with bioluminescent inscriptions that pulsed with an inner light, casting an ethereal glow across the chamber. Beside him, Elder Callan, Seluria's most respected scholar, traced his gnarled blue finger across one particular section of text. "It was hidden in plain sight all these years," the elder explained, his voice quavering with excitement. "The prophecy of twin stars speaks of a child born of 2 worlds who would possess the gift of harmony, the ability to bridge minds across species." Derek studied the ancient Selurian script, now partially translated by the interface in his earpiece. "And you believe this refers to our child?" "The timing is precise," Elder Callan nodded. "The prophecy speaks of the child arriving when the great cycle completes its turn, which happens to coincide with your son's expected birth date." The discovery of the prophecy had caused a sensation throughout Selurian society. What had begun as scholars' curious research into historical precedents for human Selurian offspring had uncovered ancient texts predicting their union. Some Selurians viewed it as divine validation of the alliance. Others remained skeptical but intrigued. Derek had approached it all with cautious pragmatism. A trait Aerie teased him was quintessentially human. Still, he couldn't deny the strange coincidences that seemed to surround their relationship. "Commander Allen," a palace attendant appeared at the chamber entrance. "The princess requests your presence. It's time for the final prenatal examination." Derek thanked Elder Callan and hurried through the palace corridors. Since the attack, security remained tight, but life had settled into a new normal. The failed assassination attempt had actually strengthened support for their union, with public opinion across both worlds turning decisively against the genetic purists. He found Aerie in the medical chamber, reclining on a specialized bed as royal physicians prepared their equipment. Her abdomen was now prominently rounded, her skin glowing with an intensified version of the natural Selurian luminescence. She smiled when she saw him, reaching out her hand. "I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost in those ancient texts," she teased as he took her hand. "Elder Kalen is convinced our son is the fulfillment of a 1,000-year-old prophecy," Derek replied, kissing her forehead. "No pressure on the little guy." "The prophecy of twin stars," she nodded. "My father has been consulting with the High Council about it. They believe our son may possess unique abilities." The chief physician, a dignified Selurian female named Healer Taris, approached with a device that resembled a transparent tablet. "We're ready to begin the final assessment, Your Highness." Derek watched in fascination as the device was placed over Ares' abdomen. A three-dimensional holographic image appeared above it, showing their son in remarkable detail. The child floated peacefully, his features a perfect blend of human and Selurian, skin a lighter blue than Ares, but with distinct human characteristics, his tiny hands already showing the beginnings of fingernails. "His development continues to exceed expectations," Healer Terrace announced, "and we've detected something extraordinary." She adjusted the device, and the hologram zoomed in on the child's brain. "These neural patterns are unlike anything we've seen before. The connection between the logical and intuitive centers is remarkably developed." "Is that normal?" Derek asked, concerned. "It's unprecedented," Terrace replied, "but not concerning. It suggests he may indeed possess the empathic abilities mentioned in the ancient texts, the gift of harmony." After the examination, Derek and Irie retreated to their private chambers. The evening light of Siluria streamed through the viewport, bathing the room in a soft azure glow. Derek sat beside Irie on their bed, his hand resting gently on her abdomen, feeling the occasional movements of their son. "Have you decided on a name?" he asked. They had been discussing possibilities for weeks, trying to find something that honored both their heritages. "I was thinking of Irin," she said softly. "It's an ancient Selurian name meaning bridge between worlds." "Iran," Derek repeated, feeling the name's weight in significance. "It's perfect." Irie placed her hand over his. "When I first met you, I never imagined we would come to this moment. You thought I was too pure to touch, and now you're carrying our son," he finished, smiling at the memory of their beginnings. "Life has a strange way of unfolding." "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Being thrust into this arrangement, becoming part of an alien world, facing danger because of who we are?" Derek considered the question seriously. "Not for a moment," he finally said. "What began as duty became the greatest adventure of my life. You and Iran are my family, my home, regardless of which planet we're on." Her emerald eyes shimmered with emotion as she leaned forward to kiss him. Even after all these months, the touch of her lips still sent a thrill through him. A chime at their door interrupted the moment. Chancellor Vorn entered, his imposing frame somehow softened by the obvious excitement in his bearing. "The preparations are complete," he announced. "The naming ceremony will take place in the Grand Plaza at the next full alignment of our moons, so 3 days from now." The naming ceremony was a Selurian tradition, but this one would incorporate Earth customs as well. Representatives from both worlds would attend, including Derek's parents, making their first journey to Siluria. "Thank you, Father," Ares said. "Has there been any further word from the Genetic Heritage League?" "Their influence wanes daily," Vorn replied with satisfaction. "The attack backfired spectacularly. Even their former supporters distance themselves now." After the Chancellor departed, Derek and Ares stood at the viewport, watching the twin moons of Siluria rise above the horizon. In the city below, lights twinkled like earthbound stars. 3 days until we formally introduce Irina to both our worlds, Derek mused. "Are you nervous?" Yuki asked. "About being a father?" "Terrified," he admitted with a laugh, "but also more certain than I've ever been about anything." She turned in his arms to face him. "Remember when my father asked why you hadn't touched me and you said I was too pure? How could I forget? I thought he might execute me on the spot. I never told you what I thought in that moment," she said, her expression serious. "When you said those words, I realized you were the first person who ever saw me. Not just the princess, not just a political asset, but me." Derek brushed a strand of silvery hair from her face. "And what I never told you was how that moment changed me too. I came to Siluria thinking I was just doing my duty for Earth. But standing there, facing your father, I realized some principles transcend diplomacy, transcend even worlds. Human principles, she said with a smile. Human decency, he corrected gently. Something I hope our son inherits along with your strength and wisdom. 3 days later, under the aligned moons of Siluria and before representatives of two worlds, Aaron was formally named and presented. As Derek held his son, tiny, perfect, with skin the color of Earth's sky and eyes that already showed hints of his mother's emerald hue, he felt a sense of completion he had never known was possible. Ambassador Trell, representing the Galactic Diplomatic Corps, stepped forward to make a formal pronouncement. The GDC recognizes Aaron Allen Vorn as the first officially registered human Selurian citizen, with full rights and protections of both worlds. May he be the first of many bridges between species. As applause erupted from the assembled dignitaries, Derek looked at Ari, radiant in her ceremonial attire, and then down at their son. What had begun with his refusal to touch someone he thought too pure had culminated in the purest thing of all, a family that transcended the stars themselves.